I picked up a book by an author I'd never heard of, Thomas Merton. It was called The Seven-Story Mountain. And that was the pivotal thing for me. And that really brought about my understanding that, not that I had any great faith, but that I needed God. And I was sure hoping God was hanging on to me.
What a different world we live in the sense that a book like that could become a bestseller, a huge seller to all kinds of people. And you really wouldn't expect anything like that now, something that
right.
profoundly and transparently religious.
Religious, right. Well, I think it was also such a bestseller. First of all, as a friend of mine once said, Merton never wrote an uninteresting sentence. He was a fabulous writer.
And he wrote a lot of sentences.
He wrote a lot of sentences. I haven't read it all. He's just wrote so much. And it's also a fascinating story because he was a forerunner of the hippies, I think you'd say.
Oh, yeah.
And led a pretty dissolute life before his conversion. So it was a fascinating story.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of Augustine kind of quality that we all relate to because we all feel that way, I think. He did such a great job of writing about it. He was, I'm guessing, one of the voices that you really found yourself paying attention to and you encountered them in college for sure. Excuse me, because you were in a college that had a great books curriculum, so you were reading books written by, well, the classics. You're reading all the classics. So were there other voices with his that really caught your ear?
Back then, well, I think that biography of Teresa of Avila and St. John of the Cross. It was only later that it was really the early monastic writers appealed to me. Although even then, the Desert Fathers, I think. Trying to think of more secular writers. I would say the Russians, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, James Joyce. I loved James Joyce's writing. My goodness, what a writer.
Yeah. So you were having a real intellectual awakening, an academic awakening, but unlike many people who go through that kind of experience, you were also having a very religious awakening. And
just before and during seminary, yes.
One of the authors you talk about in one of my favorite sections in the book, Diminishment, is the spiritual theologian Adrian von Kamm.
I only ran into him much later.
That was later?
Much later.
But let's talk about him, though, if you don't mind. I was really struck by, that whole section, that chapter was just really very engaging. And you talk about, you say, our limits are the outline of our vocation, or that's his quote?
That's von Kamm.
That's him. But you took that and ran with it in the chapter. Would you talk a bit about the changing nature of diminishment as we age, and about how you see it impacting one's comprehension of one's vocation, and you can deal with your own or, in general.
Wow,
But we change.
We do.
As we lose faculty. I think that's part of what he's talking about. But
well, I don't think von Kamm. I don't really see that as what he meant. He was, I think, if I've got it right, and I have it third hand via a fellow who studied under him, I think von Kamm was really referring to, and that's sort of what I picked up on in the essay, the fact that we all are limited, finite creatures, okay? We're all gifted, but the downside or the other side of gifts are that we have limits. Like I'm a word person. I'm not a music person. just not. I wish I was. I love music, but it's not there. And I'm not a math person. I'm not a science person. There's so many things that are limits for me. And so those limits say, well, I'm never going to be a scientist. I'm never going to be a great mathematician. And I'm surely not going to be a great musician. If I could carry a tune, I would be delighted. So I think that's kind of what he's saying, is our gifts are kind of this central focus. He doesn't say this, at least not in that quote. Our gifts are kind of the central focus of what our call is, of what our vocation, our unique life call is. But our limits, they literally delimit what we can't do. And so for me,